Okay, here we have a video on making an equation if you have two coordinate pairs. Um, and so the type of equation that we're talking about is the linear equation that's in slope-intercept form here with mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. And if we're doing this from 2 points, this is just in general if we have 2 points, x1, y1, x2, y2. There's a formula for this, and we've talked about slope. You have probably heard of it as rise over run. You've also looked at change in y and change in x when you've found slope from tables. So the formula here is really just kind of a formal way of doing the same thing that you've been doing. So if we look at these 2 points, 1, 3 and negative 2, 5, we're going to make this first one our x1, y1, and our second one x2, y2. It doesn't actually matter which one's which, I'm just labeling them. Then to find the slope, we're going to take this y2, subtract y1, x2, subtract x1, that would be negative 3. So our slope between these 2 points would be negative 2/3. Okay? So that's half of our equation. At this point, our equation looks like this. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus b. The x and the y are going to change. The b we still need to figure out though. Okay, and so in order to find out b, which is the y-intercept, we have to take one of these original 2 points and plug it in to this equation. Obviously, we're not going to plug in anything for b right now because we don't know it, but we're going to take the 1 and the 3 and plug them into here. So this is going to look like 3 equals negative 2/3 times 1 plus b. And then we're going to solve this for b, kind of like we're solving an equation. Negative 2/3 times 1, that's just negative 2/3. And so in order to get b by itself and solve for b, to find out what b equals, we're going to have to add 2/3 to both sides. And this might look a little bit messy because it's fractions, and fractions sometimes are messy, but really these steps are fairly straightforward. So then this is 3 and 2/3 equals b. So we now know what b is, and we can finish the equation by going back up to here and replacing b with 3 and 2/3. Okay, so our equation for the line between those 2 points is y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3 and 2/3. All right. There are some special cases where you might have kind of weird slopes. So in this case, if we calculate the slope x1, y1, x2, y2, we would go y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which equals 3. So our equation is y equals 3x plus b. And we take one of our points. I'm going to choose 0, 1 because I think 0 and 1 are going to be easier to calculate stuff with than 2 and 7. So I'm going to plug those in. So we have 3 times 0, 1 equals 0 plus b. So in this case, it's kind of weird because there's not really anything you actually have to do. So b is just equal to 1. And so your equation looks like this. Y equals, here was our slope, 3, x plus 1. Okay. The other reason that, and this is the reason why you don't actually have to solve for this, if you look right here, if we go kind of backwards, 0, 1 sort of gives you the y-intercept without you actually having to do any work. Because if you think about a graph, and just any line on the graph, the y-intercept is always at the y-axis, obviously, which is where x equals 0. So if you have a point like this where the x-coordinate is already 0, then that pretty much tells you that the y-intercept is going to be 1. You don't actually have to go through this calculation. You already know that it's going to be 1 because x is 0, y is 1. And that's what we ended up calculating anyway. Okay? Next one. This one's going to have a kind of a weird slope. So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And we end up with 4 over 0, which is the same as saying 4 divided by 0. But we know that you can't divide by 0. So this is actually undefined slope. And an undefined slope is a slope that's straight up and down. If you're thinking about a graph, it looks like this. That's an undefined slope. So if you look at a straight up and down line, it's going to be parallel to the y-axis, and it's never actually going to cross the y-axis. So there will be no y-intercept. It'll just be a straight up and down line at x equals 3. And I know it's at x equals 3 because both of these x coordinates are 3. So the equation for this line would just be x equals 3. Okay. The last one, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. You end up with 0 over 5. Well, 0 divided by anything is just 0. So we actually have a 0 slope line here, which in terms of the graph looks like this. It's straight horizontal. It will cross the y-axis. It just won't have, it's a 0 slope, so it's not going to slope upwards or downwards. It's just going to be a flat line, flat horizontal line. To figure out the y-intercept, we're just going to look at the y-coordinates. Every y-coordinate of every point on this line is going to be at 10. So this is going to cross the y-axis at 10. It's never going to go up or down. So the equation for this line is y equals 10. Okay. You've got a before class here. You're going to find the equation, and just to clarify, that would be the slope-intercept equation through the points 2, 6 and -2, 4.